A door slammed shut before she even finished her sentence. Another door. Then another. 4 boys stood behind her, the oldest barely 12, the youngest still gripping her skirt. Wind cut across the yard. Nobody offered water. Nobody offered a chair. One rancher spat near her boots and told her to keep walking. She had walked 11 miles already. Her boys hadn't eaten since morning. At the 5th ranch, a man raised a rifle just to make his answer clear. She backed away, pulling her sons with her, boots dragging in dust. Her name was Mary Coleman, and by sundown, she had been turned away 7 times. What made the 8th rancher, a cowboy nobody trusted, throw open his gate when every other man in the territory had already slammed theirs? Stay with me on this one. The sun dropped lower, and the cold came with it. Mary pulled her coat tighter and kept her boys moving. Thomas walked beside her, matching her pace, trying to look older than 12. Behind him came the twins, Samuel and Luke, 10 years old, sharing a blanket between them. And behind all of them, struggling to keep up, was Daniel, 6 years old, too small for this kind of walking. "Ma, I can carry him," Thomas said. "You're carrying enough." He was. He had her husband's old coat on his back, 3 sizes too big, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He'd taken to wearing it the day after the funeral, like putting it on meant he could fill it. 6 months. That's how long it had been since William Coleman went out to check on a fence line and never came back. A horse spooked. A fall. A broken neck in the dirt. And just like that, 4 boys had no father, and Mary had no husband. She didn't let herself think about the day they buried him. Not now. There wasn't room for it. Grief was a luxury for people with a roof over their heads. The bank had come for the ranch 2 months later. Said the loan William took out the year before was overdue, and with no one working the land, no one able to pay it back, they had every right to take it. She'd argued. She'd begged. She'd shown them the deed her husband kept in a tin box under the bed. None of it mattered. Papers got signed. Men in clean suits nailed a notice to her own front door, and by the end of the week, she was standing in the yard with 4 boys and whatever she could carry. No family left in the territory to take them in. Her sister had died of fever 3 winters back. William's people were all buried or scattered across 2 other territories, too far to reach and too poor to help even if she could. She had one option left, and she knew it, though she hadn't said it out loud to her boys yet. The county. If she couldn't find work, couldn't find shelter, couldn't prove she could feed and clothe 4 children through the winter, the county would step in. And the county didn't keep families together. They split boys up, sent them to different homes, different towns, sometimes different territories altogether. She'd heard the stories. Brothers who never saw each other again. She would rather freeze in this wind than let that happen. So she walked, ranch to ranch, gate to gate, asking for work, asking for a room, asking for anything. 7 doors slammed on her today. 7 men who looked at 4 hungry boys and decided they weren't worth the trouble. Daniel stumbled. Thomas caught him before he hit the ground. "We're almost somewhere," Mary said, though she had no idea if that was true. She reached into her coat pocket and felt the familiar weight of the watch. Gold-plated, a little worn at the edges, William's initials scratched into the back. His father had given it to him, and his father before that. It was the only thing of real value she had left. She'd carried it 11 miles today, ready to hand it over to any man willing to take it in trade for a warm floor and a plate of food. 7 times, nobody had even let her get the words out. The road bent, and past a line of bare trees, she saw it. A light. Small, flickering, but real. A ranch house, low and rough-looking. Fencing that had seen better years. A barn that leaned slightly to one side like it was tired of standing straight. She'd heard of this place. Heard the name attached to it more than once today, always in the same tone people use for something they were warning you about. Jesse Colt. A man other ranchers didn't talk to. A man with a past nobody would explain out loud, just hints and head shakes, and a warning to stay clear. Some said he'd killed a man once. Some said worse. Nobody seemed to know for certain, and nobody seemed eager to find out firsthand. She stood at the edge of his fence line and looked at her boys. Daniel could barely stand on his own now. The twins had gone quiet, the kind of quiet that came from exhaustion, not calm. Thomas watched her, waiting for a decision, same as always. She thought about the rifle raised at the 5th ranch. She thought about the doors slammed in her face. She thought about a man with a violent reputation and what he might do to a widow who showed up uninvited at dusk. Then she thought about her boys freezing through another night with no roof above them. She walked to the gate. Her hand never reached the gate latch. The door opened first. A man stepped out onto the porch, rifle already raised, barrel pointed low but ready. He was tall, broad through the shoulders, a few days of beard on his jaw. He didn't say a word. He just looked at her, then past her, at the 4 boys standing in the dark behind her skirt. Mary's breath caught. Her hand moved toward her coat pocket, toward the watch, the only thing she had left to offer a man who looked like he'd shoot first and ask questions never. "Please," she said. "We don't want trouble. I have something to trade. A watch. It's gold it's worth. Put that away." His voice was flat. Not cruel. Not warm either. Just flat, like a man who didn't waste words on things that didn't matter. He lowered the rifle. His eyes moved over the boys again, slower this time. Daniel, barely standing. The twins, wrapped in one blanket, shivering. Thomas, standing tall in a coat 3 sizes too big, trying to look like he wasn't afraid. "How long they been out in this?" "All day," Mary said. "We've walked since morning." He didn't ask why. He didn't ask where her husband was, or why a woman was walking 4 boys across the territory at sundown with nowhere to go. He just stepped back from the door and pushed it wide open. "Get them inside." Mary froze for half a second, waiting for the catch, waiting for the price he'd name once they were through the door. It didn't come. He just stood there, holding the door, cold air pushing past him into the house. She herded her boys forward. Daniel went first, then the twins, then Thomas, who looked back at his mother before stepping past the threshold, like he wanted to be sure she was following. She was. Inside, the house was small and rough, but there was a fire going in the hearth, and the warmth hit her like a wall. She hadn't realized how cold she'd gotten until she felt the heat on her face. The man, Jesse, she'd learned his name properly within the hour, moved around the room without much talk. He pulled a pot from the stove, poured out something that smelled like beans and salted meat, set out plates that didn't match. He didn't ask if they wanted food. He just gave it to them, one bowl after another, and watched the boys eat like a man checking a job was done right. Daniel finished first and fell asleep sitting up, spoon still in his hand. Jesse reached over, took the spoon from his fingers, and set it down without a word. "He can sleep in my bed," Jesse said. "All of them can. I'll take the floor. You don't have to." Didn't ask if I had to. That was the end of that conversation. Mary sat by the fire while the boys settled, watching this man who the whole territory had warned her about. He didn't look dangerous now. He looked tired. Tired in a way that went past one bad day. "You lost someone," she said quietly. Not a question. She could see it in the way he moved around the house, like he was used to filling silence where people used to be. Jesse didn't answer right away. He poked at the fire, added another log, watched the sparks climb. "Long time ago," he said. "Wife. Boy of my own." He didn't explain how. She didn't ask. Some doors you don't push on, not when a man's just fed your children and given up his own bed for strangers he'd never met before tonight. "Thank you," Mary said. "For this." Jesse just nodded, like gratitude was something he didn't quite know what to do with. By morning, word had already started moving through town, the way word always did in a territory where everyone knew everyone's business before breakfast. Jesse Colt took in the widow. Jesse Colt took in her boys. The men who'd slammed their doors on Mary the night before now leaned over fence posts and store counters, trading the news back and forth with narrowed eyes. Nobody said it was a kind thing. They said it was strange. They said a man like Jesse didn't do something for nothing, and they wondered out loud what he was really after. Suspicion moved faster than relief ever could in that part of the territory. But inside Jesse's small ranch house, none of that mattered yet. Days passed, and something like a rhythm took hold. Mary rose early and had breakfast going before the boys were even out of bed, the smell of biscuits and coffee filling the small kitchen. Thomas took to the chores fast, following Jesse out to the fence line every morning, learning how to string wire tight, how to set a post so it wouldn't lean. The twins fed the chickens and hauled water, racing each other back from the well until Mary called them in for supper. Daniel, still too small for real work, sat on the porch step and watched it all like he was memorizing it. Jesse didn't talk much, but he showed things. He showed Thomas how to hold a hammer right. He showed Samuel and Luke where the good fishing was, down past the tree line. He never asked Mary for anything beyond what she offered on her own. A meal cooked, a shirt mended, a house kept clean. In the evenings, they sat together by the fire, the boys tired and full, Mary with a needle and thread in her hands, Jesse cleaning the same rifle he'd greeted her with that first night, the one that now stood propped by the door like it belonged there. Like it was just part of the house now, same as the table or the hearth. Nobody mentioned the watch again. Nobody mentioned the county, or the bank, or the 7 doors that had slammed shut before this one opened. For the first time in 6 months, Mary Coleman let herself believe the worst of it was behind her. Torches lit up the yard before the dogs even started barking. Mary heard the hooves first, a dozen of them at least, pounding hard against packed dirt. She was up from her chair before she knew she'd moved, pulling Daniel back from the window. Jesse was already at the door, rifle in hand, the same rifle that had stood propped and quiet for 2 peaceful weeks. "Boys, stay back from the windows," he said. His voice was calm, but his knuckles were white around the barrel. Through the glass, Mary counted the riders. 6, 7, more coming up behind them. Torchlight threw long shadows across the yard, across the fence Thomas had spent 2 weeks learning to mend. A man out front swung down off his horse. Big man, gray at the temples, a look on his face like he'd been waiting a long time to wear it. "Colt," the man shouted. "Come on out here." Jesse stepped onto the porch. Mary followed, close enough to see, far enough to keep the boys behind her. "Evening, Harlan," Jesse said. "Bit late for a social call." "This ain't social." Harlan's eyes moved past Jesse, found Mary standing in the doorway. "Widow Coleman. Figured you'd wash up here sooner or later." "State your business," Jesse said. "My business is you're hiding a debt owed to good men in this territory. Money that belongs to the bank, and by extension, belongs to every rancher who's had to carry the weight your brother left behind." Mary felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't about her anymore. This wasn't about charity, or suspicion, or a widow showing up at the wrong gate. There was a debt here. A history. Something older than last night, older than her 7 slammed doors. "My brother's been dead 8 years, Jesse said, voice flat. "Whatever you think he owed you, that's between you and a grave. Except it ain't just about your brother no more, is it?" Harlan's mouth curled. "Word is you've been sitting on paperwork. Bank paperwork. The kind that says a certain loan got called in on a certain widow's ranch a little sooner than it should have. The kind of paper that makes men in this territory look real bad if it ever sees daylight." Mary's stomach turned. She didn't understand all of it yet, but she understood enough. Somewhere in this man's words was the reason the bank had taken her home 2 months after burying her husband. Somewhere in Jesse's house, maybe, was proof of it. "You don't know what you're talking about," Jesse said. "I know you're harboring 4 boys the county's got a legal claim to," Harlan said. Louder now, loud enough for the men behind him to hear, loud enough for the boys pressed against the wall inside to hear too. "Widow can't feed them, can't house them, can't prove she's fit. County's within its rights to take them into care. Split them up proper, the way it's supposed to be done." "They're not going anywhere," Jesse said. "That ain't up to you." Harlan took a step closer to the porch. "Sheriff's going to hear about this. About you keeping a woman and her boys who ain't yours. About whatever you're hiding in that house that belongs to the bank. You want to make this simple. You hand over what you're sitting on, and you let the widow and her boys move along like they should have 2 weeks ago. You want to make it hard. Well, make it hard." Jesse raised the rifle an inch. Just an inch. Enough to say he meant it. "Get off my land." Nobody moved for a long second. Torches crackled. A horse stamped somewhere in the dark. Then Harlan spat in the dirt, climbed back onto his horse, and looked down at Jesse one last time. "You had a chance to do this easy," he said. "Sheriff will be out here soon enough. And when he is, you won't have a choice about any of it." The riders turned and rode off, torchlight shrinking into the dark until the yard was quiet again. Just the wind and the sound of Mary's own heartbeat too loud in her ears. If you're still with me, this is the part where the story stops being about charity and starts being about survival. Hit that subscribe button, because it only gets harder from here. Inside, the boys were huddled together on the floor, Daniel crying quiet into Thomas's sleeve. Mary went to them, pulled them close, tried to say something comforting, and found she didn't have the words. Jesse stood at the door a while longer, staring out at the empty yard, rifle still in his hand. "Jesse," Mary said. "What was he talking about?" "The bank. My ranch." He didn't answer right away. He set the rifle back by the door, slower this time, like the weight of it had changed. "Come sit down," he said. There's something you need to know. About my brother. About the land he used to own before the bank got hold of it. And about why men like Harlan have wanted me gone from this territory for a long, long time. Mary sat, the boys quiet around her, waiting. This grudge, Jesse said, it's not new. It's not about you, and it's not really about me either, not at the start of it. It goes back further than that. 10 years, maybe more. He looked toward a cupboard in the corner of the room, one Mary had never paid much attention to. There's a ledger in there, he said. Papers I never showed a soul. Proof of what the bank did. Not just to your ranch, Mary. To my brother's land, too, and to at least 2 other families in this territory before he died. Mary felt the floor shift beneath her, though nothing had moved. You've had this the whole time? I never had a reason to use it, Jesse said. Until now. Morning came gray and still. Mary hadn't slept. She sat by the cupboard most of the night, listening to Jesse turn pages by candlelight, watching him mark passages with a thumbnail, whispering dates and numbers to himself like a man rebuilding a wall stone by stone. By the time the sun cleared the tree line, they heard the hooves again. More riders this time. Harlan was back, and behind him rode a man with a tin star pinned to his coat. The sheriff. 6 other ranchers trailed behind, faces set hard, torches gone now, replaced by daylight and the kind of confidence that came with the law riding at your side. Boys, inside, Mary said. All the way inside. Thomas didn't move at first. Thomas, I'm not a boy anymore, Ma. Not since Pa died. He said it quiet, not defiant, just true. She didn't have time to argue it. Jesse stepped out onto the porch, rifle raised, held level this time, no inch of warning left in it. Mary followed, and behind her, against every instruction she'd just given, all 4 boys came too. Daniel gripped Thomas's sleeve. The twins stood shoulder to shoulder. The sheriff swung down off his horse first. Older man, tired eyes, the kind of face that had seen too many fence-line disputes to enjoy this part of the job. Colt, the sheriff said. Got a complaint here, says you're harboring county property in the form of 4 minor children and withholding documents belonging to First Territory Bank. I'm here to settle both. Documents belonging to the bank, Jesse said. That's an interesting way to put it. Hand it over, Colt, Harlan said, sitting tall on his horse. Ledger, papers, whatever you got. And let the widow's boys go with the sheriff. Easiest thing for everybody. Easiest thing for you, Jesse said. Rifle down, the sheriff said. I don't want this getting ugly on a Tuesday morning. Jesse didn't lower it. His jaw was tight, his eyes moving between Harlan and the sheriff and the 6 other men sitting on their horses like they were watching a show they'd already decided the ending to. Mary's hand went to her coat pocket, found the watch, held on to it without thinking. It didn't matter anymore, not for trading, not for buying a night's shelter. It just felt like something solid in a moment that wasn't. That was when Thomas stepped forward. He walked past his mother, past Jesse's arm, out onto the open ground between the porch and the horses. 12 years old, wearing his father's coat, a book clutched against his chest that Mary hadn't even seen him carry out of the house. Thomas, get back here, Mary said, panic cracking her voice. It's all right, Ma. He didn't look back at her. He looked at the sheriff, then at Harlan, then at the whole line of men sitting above him on their horses like they were bigger than they actually were. Boy, this ain't your business, Harlan said. It is my business. Thomas opened the ledger. His hands shook, but his voice held. This is my mother's ranch you're talking about. Was my mother's ranch. Before you took it. Get that kid out of the road. One of the other ranchers muttered. Let him talk, the sheriff said, and something in his tone had shifted. Curiosity, maybe, or the beginning of doubt. Thomas found the page. He'd clearly practiced it, or maybe just understood it the way children sometimes understand things adults spend years avoiding. Loan on the Coleman Ranch, dated the 14th of March, he read. Called due in full, 90 days, on account of missed payment. Except, he looked up, there wasn't a missed payment. My pa paid that loan the month before he died. Right here. Payment received, March the 9th. Signed. Silence dropped over the yard like a dropped hat. Same book, Thomas went on, voice steadier now. Says 2 other ranches got the same letter. Called in early. Same month my uncle's land went to the bank too, according to what Jesse told us. That's forged, Harlan said, but it came out fast, too fast, and it cracked at the edges. It's the bank's own book, Jesse said, kept in their own hand. You want to tell the sheriff how a boy forged something that's been locked in my cupboard for 8 years, before he was even born. The sheriff walked forward and took the ledger from Thomas's hands, gentle, like he understood what it had cost the boy to carry it out here. He turned pages himself now, slow, his face changing as he read. This says the bank called in loans early on 3 separate properties, the sheriff said. Same season, same signature at the bottom of each one. That signature belonged to anyone standing in this yard. Nobody answered. Harlan's horse shifted under him, and he didn't meet the sheriff's eyes. Harlan, the sheriff said, you sat on the loan board that year. That don't mean nothing, Harlan said, but his voice had lost its size. The other ranchers behind him had gone quiet, glancing at each other now instead of at Jesse. Means enough for me to take this book back to the territory office, the sheriff said. Means I got no cause today to remove 4 children from a home where somebody's clearly been feeding them and teaching them to read a ledger better than half the men in this yard. Harlan opened his mouth, found nothing to fill it with, and closed it again. This isn't over, Colt, he finally said, but it came out thin, a man saying words because silence would have been worse. It is for today, the sheriff said. He looked at Jesse, then at Mary, then down at Thomas, who was standing straighter now than Mary had seen him stand in 6 months. Ma'am, apologies for the trouble. The riders turned. One by one, they rode off the way they'd come. No torches this time, no shouting, just the sound of hooves fading into open land and the weight of something that had finally broken. Jesse lowered the rifle. His arm shook slightly, the first sign of anything unsteady in him since Mary had met him. Mary pulled Thomas into her arms, and for a second he let her, 12 years old and trying so hard to be older, finally allowed to just be her son again. 3 weeks passed, and the territory settled into a different kind of quiet than the one Mary remembered from that first cold walk. The fence line Thomas had learned to mend now ran clean and tight around the whole east pasture, no leaning posts left anywhere Jesse's eye could reach. The twins had a system going with the chickens, one filling the feed trough while the other counted eggs out loud just to hear himself do the math right. Daniel had grown an inch, or it seemed that way, mostly because he stood straighter now, like nobody was going to make him walk 11 miles again anytime soon. Word had gotten around about what happened in that yard. It always did. But this time the word moving through town wasn't suspicion. It was something closer to shame. The first one to show up was a woman Mary recognized from the second ranch she'd knocked on that day, the one where nobody had even opened the door all the way. She came up the road on a wagon with a basket of preserves and a look on her face like she'd rehearsed an apology the whole ride over and still didn't know how to start it. We didn't know your situation, the woman said, standing awkward at the gate. Didn't ask. Should have asked. Mary took the basket. Didn't make her say more than that. Some apologies don't need stretching out. Others came after. A rancher who'd raised his rifle just to make his answer clear dropped off a sack of feed corn without a word, left it by the barn, and rode off before anyone could thank him. Another sent his boy over with a note offering Thomas work come planting season. Real work, paid work, the kind that told a family they were staying, not just surviving. Jesse didn't say much about any of it. He watched the gifts pile up on the porch step with the same flat expression he'd worn the night Mary showed up with a watch and 4 cold boys, like gratitude and guilt were both just weather passing through. Nothing to comment on directly. They're not doing it for you, Mary said one evening, watching him stack the feed corn into the barn. I know that. Does it bother you? He thought about it, the way he thought about most things, slow and careful, like words cost something and he didn't want to spend the wrong ones. No, he said. Bothers me more, the ones who never came at all. Mary understood that better than she let on. The sheriff rode out once more, near the end of that 3rd week. This time alone, no torches, no Harlan trailing behind him. He came with paperwork. The county had reviewed the ledger, cross-checked the bank's records against the loan board's signatures, and found exactly what Thomas had read aloud in that yard. 3 ranches, including Mary's, had been called in early on falsified grounds. The bank had already moved to reverse the seizure. Whether the land itself could ever be returned was still tangled in more paperwork than anyone wanted to look at, but the debt against the Coleman name was gone. Wiped clean, in writing, signed by the same sheriff who'd once stood in the yard deciding whether to take her boys away. Mary read the letter twice at the kitchen table, then a 3rd time, then set it down and didn't say anything for a while. "Don't undo the ranch," she finally said. "No," Jesse agreed. "But it undoes the lie." That seemed to matter more than she expected it to. Harlan didn't come around again. Word was he'd sold off half his herd and gone quiet on his own land, waiting to see how much of the loan board scandal would land on his name specifically once the county finished digging. Mary didn't spend much time thinking about him. There wasn't room for it, same as there hadn't been room for grief on the road that first night. Some things you just set down and walk past. In the evenings now, the fire in Jesse's hearth burned the same as it always had, but the house around it felt different, fuller. Thomas still followed Jesse out to the fence line most mornings, though there was less left to mend these days, so mostly they just walked it, checking, talking about nothing in particular. The twins had taken to calling Jesse's ranch home without correcting themselves halfway through the sentence anymore. Daniel slept through the night now, no more waking up cold and confused in an unfamiliar bed. One evening, Mary sat by the fire with her sewing basket, same as she had that first week, and reached into her coat pocket out of old habit. Her fingers found the watch, still there, still cold and heavy the way it had been on the road. She turned it over once in her hand. William's initials, worn smooth at the edges from years of his own thumb rubbing over them, and 6 months of hers doing the same. She didn't need to trade it anymore. Nobody was asking her to. Instead, she walked it over to where Thomas sat mending a bridle by lamplight, and set it down beside him without a word. He looked up at it, then at her. "It was your father's," she said, "and his father's before him. I think it's time it belonged to somebody who's going to grow into it." Thomas picked it up carefully, like it weighed more than it did, and closed his hand around it the way a boy closes his hand around something he understands is bigger than a gift. Outside, the wind moved through the fence line Thomas had built with his own hands, past a gate that had opened when every other gate in the territory had slammed shut, and settled quiet over a house that had finally stopped being just a roof and started being something closer to home.